This is Death or Prison, brought to you by leanonmeusa.org. We bring you stories of hope and encouragement.
Hello and welcome to the Death or Prison podcast, brought to you by leanonmeusa.org. I am Johnny Branham. To my right, Mr. Elmo Golden, and our guest today, David Burke. Going to have a conversation today with David Burke, and we're going to get into a litany of things in regards to your life and some things that may have led up to incarceration. But I want to back all the way up. Life growing up in California, although it was a brief stay. Tell us about that.
Okay, so my mom was 20 years old when she had me, and which was very young. She grew up in the 40s and 50s and 60s, and so life was quite a bit different back then than it is now. But I don't really remember much about California. I was such a young age when I moved there, moved from there. So just to give a little back history of my childhood, I grew up in Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, Iowa, a brief stay in Florida. I have a sister that's 14 months younger than me. And but I do have some memories from some of them other states. Just to get a little brief history leading up to some of my character defects that I've discovered over the years of taking different programs. When I was younger, I was an out-of-control kid, and when I say younger, between the ages of like 5 and 10. I was a real problem for my mom, who was struggling to just put food on the table. And I was creating her own problems. I ended up, because she couldn't handle me, she had me go see psychiatrists and all kinds of different doctors to try to figure out what was wrong with me. I was a real problem child.
What types of problems at 5 to 10 years old were you causing that caused your mom to bring you before a psychologist?
I was a very mischievous child. And I believe it has a lot, growing up over the years, it has a lot to do with not having a father figure in the house. Even though I had a father, he was never around because he was an alcoholic. And when he did show up, there was problems when he showed up. And it was just better when he wasn't there. So the things that I was doing at that age were things to get attention. So at the age of, I don't really know the ages, but I was put up for adoption 3 different times. I went to 3 different foster homes, got kicked out of those for various reasons.
And how old were you at those times? Can you remember?
Somewhere between 5 and 10.
Okay.
I was also placed in a psychiatric hospital. And the doctors were telling my mom and dad that I was meant to be an only child and all these other types of things. And to me, as I'm older and the things that I've learned and the programs that I've taken and the doctors that I've talked to, that all stemmed from growing up in a fatherless home. I was constantly looking for approval in all the wrong areas. I felt like I was being left out of a lot of different things. So I would create havoc to get attention, either good or bad. And, living on the side of Lake George in Michigan, I think I was around 7. Back then, people didn't lock their doors, including businesses. I broke into a store, and breaking into the store, I cut the screen, went inside, stole some candy and some 7-Ups, and was on the side of the Lake George, eating and drinking that when the cops came and got me, took me to the house, wasn't any juvenile or a detention center or anything like that. It was just brought it to my mom and dad's attention, and of course I got whooped for it. But yeah, things of that sort. I broke into a house around 8 or 9 years old. They got me. They got my footprint off the side of the wall. The neighbor witnessed me skipping around the house a couple times with a stick, popped the screen out, went inside, and I was very destructive. I threw matchbox cars through all the mirrors. I took an axe that was beside the refrigerator and chopped up the people's kitchen floor. Just an out of control youth. And I got in a lot of trouble for that stuff, and my mom wanted to put me up for adoption. And then I went to go see a psychiatric, sent me to a psychiatric hospital to try to figure out what was wrong. Oh my gosh. To figure out what was wrong with me. And, when you misbehave there, they put you in a dark room. And to me, that was more terrifying than anything I ever experienced. I didn't know what was in that room. The room was padded. I would scream bloody murder, run back and forth, slamming myself against the walls. You literally cannot see your hand in front of your face. So that was kind of traumatizing towards me. So I carried a lot of this stuff up into my adolescence years. And the same thing, looking for approval. I started out smoking cigarettes. I seen a girl in Green Acres that I liked and here in Florida in Pickwick Park. But she smoked cigarettes. I didn't smoke. She did. And she asked me for cigarettes. I didn't have the money to get her cigarettes, so I went to the store and stole some cigarettes just to give to her.
Where were you before you came to Florida?
I really don't remember. It was either Indiana, Ohio, or Michigan. So we moved to Florida. Mind you, I already told you I had a 14-month sister that's 14 months younger than me. She was born in Eustis, Florida. And so somewhere in that time we had moved back up north and then back to Florida at some point. And we moved to West Palm Beach off of Florida Avenue. And everything was good. Living in Florida was pretty much normal.
Was your dad still involved in any of these moves?
He was involved, but he wasn't there very often. Like I said, he was an alcoholic. So I remember a point in time where my mom was tired of the alcoholism, tired of the violence, tired of the episodes that would happen when he showed up back at the house after she spent, countless times making meals for him to come over and flip the kitchen table and that stuff go on the floor. So she broke up with him. One thing that I really respect about my mom is she wanted me to be there during some of the most important episodes in my life. And one of them was breaking up with my dad. We went to John Prince Park in West Palm Beach, where she called it quits with him. And I can still remember him asking my mom for one last kiss. And, I was very small. And she granted him that, gave him the kiss through the window. And I remember driving away, climbing up over the seat, waving bye to Dad. I never had that dad and son relationship. And now I'm saying goodbye for real.
and you're waving by to dad, you know as a kid that this is the last time you'll see him. And your mom is heading where?
Back to the house. So after that, you know, I can't remember all the thoughts I had about Dad at that point. I just know that I remember that experience. And I went about my life as a kid, you know, living off of Florida Avenue in downtown West Palm Beach. We also moved to Lantana. We moved to Green Acres, where my mom met my current dad, who I call Dad.
How old were you at that point?
I was probably 11 or 12.
Okay.
He's a Vietnam vet, did 3 tours in Vietnam, got shot down 3 different times. He has no stomach muscles. He's got 1.5 lung. He's got craters in his back like this, and like this deep, shrapnel all in his body. And he met my mom at Driftwood Inn, where my mom was working. And, you know, just a little back history on that. I rejected that man for years and years because he wasn't my dad. Looking in hindsight, I couldn't even begin to explain how lucky I was to have that man stepping in as my dad, even though I rejected him. And anything he told me, anything that he tried to do for me, he just wasn't my dad, and I wasn't accepting it, and I didn't want no part of it. So he ended up marrying my mom. We moved from Green Acres or down off Florida Avenue to a home in West Palm Beach, where they built a nice life, all the way up until about the age of, I want to say, 16. I was still a little wild, but I didn't have all the problems that I did as a small kid. I wasn't getting into all that trouble. This is where I got introduced to drugs at the age of 16. Before that, it was pot. And when I say drugs, I mean heavy drugs. Cocaine to be in particular.
You were smoking pot before you were 16?
Yes.
What
Yep.
age did you start using pot?
Probably around 14. And once again, it was peer pressure, wanting to be accepted, not knowing the Lord, not having a father figure in my life that I respected, even though I had a dynamite man that gave so much for his country and did so much for my mom over the years. I couldn't ask for more. I just didn't see it.
Were there any events, or was it just I know it was peer pressure with the marijuana. Was that the same case with the cocaine, or was that just kind of like a part of it? You just...
Right. It's a little mixture of both. I was afraid of doing heavy drugs. I didn't really know what cocaine was. When I got introduced to it, I went over to a friend of mine's house. His name was Jay Bransky. I went and knocked on his door, and it took him a real long time to answer the door. When they did finally answer the door, they let me in the room, and I had extended my time there for quite a while to where, you know, you get the Jones. When you do cocaine, this was powder back then. So after you go without it for a while, you start wanting more. They call it the Jones. And they couldn't hold out any longer, so they reach down under the bed, pull out a plate, and it's got these lines on it. And they do a couple lines, and then they ask me if I want some. And I was like, no way. You know what I mean? I'm thinking it's going to be like what PCP does. You're going to freak out, want to jump out into traffic, do some kind of crazy stuff. And I said, no, I can't. I don't want nothing to do with that. So as the night progressed, I started becoming inquisitive and I started asking questions. Because I see them having all this fun.
What were the questions?
The questions were like, what is it going to make you do? Is it going to make you run out in traffic or try to jump a car or jump out a window? You know, I didn't know what it was. And they're like, no, it ain't nothing like that. You know, you're going to feel good. And so I just keep probing them with a little question. I don't know what all of them were per se. I know that was one of them. And finally, the curiosity, you know, the quote, curiosity kills the cat. It got the better of me, so I wanted to try just a little bit. And so after they let me try a little bit, then I had more questions. Hey, does this stuff make your throat all numb? And they're like, yeah. And then I got the Jones. A first-time user, and I got the Jones. I want more. So that was one of my questions. I said, does this stuff make you want to have more? And they're like, yeah, you jonesing. I was like, jonesing? He goes, yeah, that means you want more. I was like, all right, well, can I have some more? And I did more.
During this time now, these friends, are they in school with you, or where did they come from?
I really don't remember how I met them. I just know they were neighborhood friends, and I don't remember them as being in my school or anything like that. I just know they were my friends, so to speak. But yeah, that decision of picking up that drug that night was the worst thing I ever did in my life. This led to many years of addiction, hurts and pain with myself, my family, my friends, and quite a few extensive bids in the Department of Corrections.
Mm-hmm. Now, before we get there, like, what was your relationship with your mom, with your sister?
My relationship with my mother, I can't really say we had a really tight relationship, even though I'm her son and she's my mom. And I love her to death right now, and I'll do anything for her. I got to go do some work for her tomorrow. So, as far as I know, we had a good relationship. It's just everything leading up into my teenage years of the problem I was to my mom. And it's amazing that she even accepts me. Even after 5 different prison stays, she still loves me. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Now, as a teen, cocaine isn't necessarily the cheapest thing to get a hold of. What were you doing to supply your addiction during this time as a teen?
Well, it started out the small stuff, you know, as it does for most people. I started, like I said, back in the days, people didn't lock their cars. They didn't lock their houses, you know. You have to do that everywhere now, but back then you could just go through a whole neighborhood and go into vehicles, and people keep change in their cigarette ashtray and in their console and all kinds of stuff like that. And so that's what I was doing at first, and as the addiction progressed, that wasn't good enough, and I started getting into heavier crimes. I started doing burglaries and stuff like that.
And how old were you at that time? Was that a quick span as 16 and you do it maybe for a year or two and then?
It was about a year of doing that and chasing that high, and smoking pot with all the friends. You know, these are the high school years, and, you know, everybody wants to go out, do a few bumps, smoke a couple joints, you know, get in the fast cars, you know. Lake Worth Beach was a big hangout back in the days. They've stopped that now, but that was like the spot to go to at night. Go to Lake Worth Beach, and everybody's got cars and cars lined up. The drugs are freely passed around, and yeah, that was like a hangout spot in my high school years.
Your high school years, what did you do? Did you have good grades, or
No, absolutely not. So,
play any sports in high school?
yeah, I had 3 different positions on the football team until I got caught smoking a cigarette in the bathroom by the coach, and I immediately got kicked off the football team. And I had 3 different positions. I thought I was secure. He caught me smoking in the boys' room, and boom,
What did you
that
play?
was gone. I was secondary punter. I was a linebacker and a running back.
You consider yourself to be an athlete at that time?
Absolutely. Still an athlete.
Well, Dave, I know you personally, and I know that you've done about 40 years. What started that spiral in your life?
That spiral started by the use of cocaine, chasing that addiction, and leading up to my arrest, my last time out of prison before this last sentence, because I'm science-based, I really love science, and I got myself in medical school. I wanted to become a paramedic, but in Palm Beach County, in order to be a paramedic, you got to be a fireman, and you can't be a fireman with a record. So that killed that. Then I thought about registered nurse. That was going to be a 4-year deal. My parents were going to put up with me for 4 years at the house, living there while I'm doing my studies, because my neighbor's mom over 30 years ago worked at the Palm Beach Kennel Club as a head nurse, and she was making $25 an hour at that time. So I can just imagine what they make now. But that was too long. So I just wanted to get myself in the door, so I enrolled to become a medical assistant. At the time of my arrest, I had the highest grade point average in my class. I had a perfect attendance, and all I needed to complete my course was pharmaceuticals and medications. I would have graduated highest in my class, and I would have got my state certification and studied a little bit more and went on my national certification. But in the midst of my schooling, I also had a car that was given to me by my brother-in-law's sales manager. It was a Caprice Classic 2-tone, brand new tires, brand new exhaust system, brand new windshield, just a really nice car. I ended up selling that car for crack, got $100 worth of crack for that car. I destroyed the car. So I get arrested, long story short, for 3 burglaries. And then they start stacking up the charges. Then I catch an escape charge.
Escape from where?
The Palm Beach County Jail. I ended up getting 4.5 years for that escape. I have 4 escapes on my record, just to clear the record. I got quite an extensive history, so 5 different prison stays. So each time you go to prison, you have a backlog of various charges that you end up taking pleas for, because you don't dare go to trial for fear of getting forever. When you know they've got you dead to the right, there's no sense going to jury trial, so you can only hope for a decent plea. And that's what I did. I accepted the responsibility each and every time.
Prior to a 5th prison sentence, there were 4 other stays in prison. But this 5th prison sentence kind of stuck out a little bit differently.
Absolutely, it stuck out. So after 4 different prison stays, and doing that time and getting out and trying to get my life back together during the last episode, before each one of these, I always pled to the judge, I have a drug problem. Look at my before and after pictures. You know what I mean? When I got arrested, I looked like a rug rat, skinny as a rail, compared to after I've been rescued and been in the county for a little while, got my weight back, looked completely different. I've had recommendations from various different agencies. Hey, give this guy a drug program. Each time they said I'll get tier treatment help in the DOC. And not one single time was I sent to a camp that had a tier program. Not that that's anybody's fault. It's up to me to get my own rehabilitation and take responsibility for my actions. So that day where I went in for sentencing, because I couldn't go to trial, And, you know, there's a statement that my mom used to tell me all the time, David, I hope you're not in prison when I die. I hope you're not in prison when I die. And them words haunted me that day after I got up and gave my testimony. My witnesses got up and gave the testimony. Dominique Calabrese of South County Mental Health got up there and gave the testimony. And Dion Spoke 9 of the Drug Abuse Foundation got up there and gave her testimony on how drug treatment would be beneficial to me. And the first thing out of the judge's mouth was, I'm going to upset a lot of people in this courtroom today, but somehow they think it's my turn to straighten out Mr. Burke. As to count 1, Blasey Squazzy, case number, and
What was count 1, just for the sake of
burglary. They were all
Okay.
burglary charges and grand theft.
Okay.
I sentenced you to 30 years as a habitual felony offender. As a count 2, 30 years as a habitual felony offender. Count 3, 30 years as a habitual felony offender. For all the counts, and then 10 years for the auto theft. Thank God he said it all ran concurrent. So in the state of Florida, you have to do 85% of your time. So 85% of 30, I now basically have a mandatory quarter. I got to do at least 25 years in prison. And when that man said that number, I looked back at my mom, and the look on her face was like a stab in the heart, brother. It was very painful at the sharp reality that I got to spend the next 25 years in prison.
Thank you, David, for that. And that's where we're going to stop, because there's more to this story. There's more to your testimony, David. We appreciate you for sharing that. And I know many of you have been listening who've been in that same situation where you're sitting in that courtroom and that pronouncement goes before you and you realize that your life is now forever changed. We're going to pick up where we left off. You don't want to miss the second part of this story. You don't want to miss the second part of this podcast here with David Burke. You've been listening to the Death or Prison podcast, brought to you by leanonmeusa.org. I am Johnny Branham. I'm here with Mr. Elmo Golden. And we have a saying. This is the Death or Prison podcast, but we say, choose life.